Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe. That's how we get better and better traction and be able to help more people. I'm excited for our guest today. Philip and I met through Arate. We've been friends for I don't know how long now, a few months, a few years. I don't know. Time flies when you're having fun. It's been a while. He's a serial entrepreneur, I would actually say. He's a runner, so big into that stuff. Husband, father, all of that stuff. His business is how to get more sales from referrals. So I'm sure that'll intrigue a lot of you guys. Been in this industry for 18 years. Before that, he was in sales. So excited to get into his whole story. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, let's get into things. What got you into sales? Sales is hard. So let's go back. Well, that's a perception. I will qualify that. For a lot of people, sales is hard. So let's go
Yeah.
back to what got you into sales as a, young person? Was your family in sales? Was your family entrepreneurial? What got you down that track at all?
No, quite the opposite. Well, my mom was basically stay-at-home mom, and she had four boys, single mom, and the my dad was a mailman. So things were a little tight,
You're from the
to say,
mailman.
yeah, to say the least. So when I was in high school, I started working really early. For I think most people that are ambitious and like us, we get jobs early, paper routes or whatever. And I think my first unofficial sales job, where I was like trying to hustle and get something for myself. I sold actually fireworks on the playground in fourth grade.
You are an American.
So yeah, and that actually earned me my first ride in a cop car, which was pretty
American.
awesome. um so anyway, but I got a job. My first real job was bussing tables, and then I did dishwashing, and then I got a job at the local ski hill. And my girlfriend's dad in high school owned a chimney and furnace cleaning company. And he was like, "Hey, why don't you come telemarket for me? I'll pay you. I think it was $6 an hour, which was $1.50 more an hour than I was making pulling chairs at the ski hill." And I was like, "Sweet, sign me up." And I had no idea what I was doing or what I was getting myself into. And I was just, young enough and dumb enough and, scared enough of him to listen to exactly what he had to say. So he was like, "Here's a phone, put the headset on, take the phone off the hook. You dial numbers for 8 hours and then you hang it up and that's your job." And I was like, "Cool, I can do that." So,
Wow.
yeah, I made like 300 calls a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And you were in high school.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive. If anyone's listening, first of all, I just want you to take into account this. I think I make 50 to 100 calls some days, some days. And a lot of people are like, wow, that's a lot of calls. I'm like, it's not a lot of calls.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I mean, I didn't really take breaks. Like you just smile and dial. And like I didn't have a fancy auto dialer. Like I'm literally just dialing numbers. I had a
I've never figured out
list.
those auto dialers either. I don't know how they work.
Yeah. So anyway, I got really good at, handling objections and getting hung up on, and it just didn't phase me. And so, when I got my next sales job and they were like, "Here's how you do referrals." And I was like, "Whoa, these people like they don't hang up on you and they don't yell at you and they actually like buy stuff when you show up. Like that's awesome." So
This is
I was
new.
very excited about that.
Wow. So then you did that for a few years, and then at 18, when you kind of graduated, were you still doing that, or what did you do as you moved into quote adulthood?
Yeah, so I actually got recruited to sell Cutco the summer between my junior and senior year in high school.
Okay.
And so I wasn't actually 18 yet. You're supposed to be 18 to sign the contract, but I wasn't actually 18 yet. And I started they put a flyer on my car at graduation, and I called them up, and there was very attractive base per appointment rate or whatever. And then I went to the interview, and they were like, "Here's how you do this," and da da da. So I latched onto that, and I was like, I saw the opportunity. And again, going back to we didn't have a lot, and we were poor, like food stamps and government cheese kind of poor. And I was like, this looks like the ticket out and a ticket to, make some more money and get some stuff that I want. And so I was just a sponge and I just listened to whatever they said. And they were like, this is how many calls you have to make. And this is how, this whole thing works. And I was like, yep, sounds awesome. Sign me up. And so I did that. I started selling knives going into my senior year of high school. And I sold knives all through my senior year. And I actually went to college my senior year instead of, going to high school. So it gave me a little bit more flexibility. And then I got out of high school and I actually I worked for another year and then I started an office and started recruiting kids to sell Cutco and built up a team and all that stuff. So,
Oh, so how many calls a day were you doing with Cutco?
It changed a little bit because with the referrals, like I was strictly from referrals and it was much more efficient. I would say 10 times more efficient. So I would probably still make 75 to 100 calls a day. But I would get, 3 times the amount of appointments. And the commission structure was totally different. So I was making way more money. And, not that I couldn't have made 300 phone calls, but like, when you're telemarketing, those 300 calls, that's your job. And with knives, I had to make calls and then I would go do
And meet
in-home
them.
appointments.
Correct.
And yeah, so it was, a little bit more of a balance on, stuff that you had going on in your calendar.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, it
And
was
then,
still,
so you started to build a team, and then what got you out of that and got you into the next level of life?
oh, so it's funny. I actually think about this often because I'm struggling right now with the same thing that killed my Cutco business is a bottleneck for me right now, which is delegation. And so I had in my office, I had 4 full-time secretaries or people that answer the phone or whatever. Um, I had 3 assistant managers
Wow.
and I had a bunch of sales reps. Um, and I just didn't trust the assistant managers to get the job done. And that killed me because, I at that time in my life, I was willing and able to work 100-hour weeks and I was doing that. Um, and that's just not sustainable for a long period of time.
Yeah.
So I, but if I had figured out how to like actually trust them and let them go and make mistakes and figure that stuff out on their own, I probably would still be there because I was making really, really, really good money. I mean, the first year that I made over $100,000, I was like 21, I think, and that was, I mean,
It's a lot of money.
insane money yeah, and that was back in 2001.
Yeah.
So, that was different
Now
kind
you're
of
dating
dollars back
yourself.
then. Yeah, exactly. So, um, but yeah, I got out of that because I just didn't, I hadn't figured out how to make the machine run on its own. And I was just killing myself. And I was like, I'm making good money, but I feel like I can go make the same amount of money somewhere else and work less. So
That's what you did. So then you started your own business then to help people get sales for referrals. Is that around that time then you started that
it was a
ish?
couple years later.
Okay.
But it started to, I started to realize like, um, other people aren't as in tune with that as I was. And, when you're good at something and it just comes second nature to you,
Yep.
you're like, oh, well, everybody's good at this, right? Like it's
Right.
so
Like it's
easy.
easy.
Yeah. So, and then I started to realize like, okay, that's not the case. And there's something here of value. And, but it's hard, when it's so easy and second nature to you, it's hard to charge people for it because you're like, well, it's simple. Like I'm not doing
Right. You feel
anything
bad almost.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I did a couple other sales jobs. I sold Canon copiers for about a year, and then I sold suits for Tom James for about 4.5 years. And it was during the suit job that I started Firestorm. And so it was really just a way for me to control my prospecting efforts. There was no like grandiose business model, and I wasn't going to build a big thing. It was really literally just a way for me to sell more suits and get good partners around me, other people that were talking to the same types of clients that I wanted to talk to. And so I could, nurture those relationships. And it kind of took off, and people were like, oh, this is really cool. And they showed up to happy hours, and then we started doing regular weekly meetings, and then we've kind of turned it into a big thing where, there's education, and we've got, a course on how to be a better networker and all that stuff. So,
Cool.
yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your company, Firestorm, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it. What's his vision? What's his mission? How, if people are interested in learning more, like where would they find out more information? Tell us a little bit more about it.
Totally. Yeah. So, really the mission is to help people get more sales from referrals. That's super passionate thing for me. That's how I grew all those other sales gigs. And, every metric that you track with referrals is better. Like the customer acquisition cost is super low because you're getting referred in, and the closing percentage is higher, the average order size is higher, the lifetime value of the client is higher. Like everything that you look at is better when you get referred into that business. And it's just so much more fun too, like, way less brain damage than than trying to like cold call or, get a internet lead or something like that. But that said, it's just one arrow in the quiver of, business development and how you grow and everything. I mean, if you're going to scale a company, you've got to be doing all these different things. But I'm super passionate about this one lane of referrals, and I want to help other small business owners understand that process. There's a method to the madness. It's a duplicatable, repeatable system that you can build to get more referrals. And so that's what we do, and teach people how to do that. We organize events and meetings, and that's part of that process is setting traps for yourself and for your referral partners to meet up and to nurture those relationships, and then eventually leverage it into business. So that's kind of all the stuff that we do. And right now we're just in Denver, but I'd like to be all over the nation and North America. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and a lot of people that I think could really use the help. And if you've ever been to a networking event, you've run into many people that you're like, this is probably not how this should go. Like
Right.
they do the business card stab, and
Here's my business card. Yeah.
yeah. They treated it like a prospecting event, which is fine, if that's what you're there for. But there's a big difference between prospecting and networking, and I'm really focused on the long-term relationship building and building out a systematic, steady flow of referrals.
So what do you think? This is good. I love this stuff. And I mean, probably almost all of our listeners that run a business or want to run a business, so referrals are important. I would not feel this is my strength. What do you feel that people lack or should do when it comes to getting referrals? What are some things that people, like you say, it's come naturally to you, but it obviously doesn't to most people or to a lot of people. What is the difference you feel?
I think there's a couple things. One, I mentioned, this delineation between prospecting and networking. A lot of people treat, networking events, because when you think of a networking event, you think of a happy hour. You think of, you go into a room, that a chamber of commerce or some association event, and there's just a ton of people there. And most people look at that and they say, well, I'm here at this networking event, and I'm going to go try and find clients. And so they go up and they talk to people, and it's like, what do you do? How, are you a good prospect for me? I mean, that's what people are thinking. Can we do business together? And then they determine as fast as they can whether or not you're a prospect or not. And then they're on to the next one. That one kind of contributes to people feeling icky about networking events, because you're always getting sold, and you're not really sure like who you should talk to and all that stuff. So there's a lot of downsides to that. And then the thing that I think people miss is like, you're not there to sell to somebody. You're there to try and figure out, is this person talking to my ideal client? And when you, instead of selling to the network, you sell through the network, And then you can, that's a much more um, scalable, and it's a much more sustainable way to do it. Because, if I meet you at an event and I'm like, okay, tell me more about your business. And I'm really genuinely curious. Like, that's the other thing. People, they love to talk too much. It's like, shut up, ask questions. One of my first sales managers said, you have two ears and one mouth, use them proportionately. So, anyway, if I'm going to figure out, if we're going to be able to do something together, I want to understand your business. I want to understand, who's your ideal client. Who are you talking to on a regular basis? What types of conversations are you having with that person? And then I'm going to say, in my head, like, are you able to introduce me to my ideal client? Is there alignment there? Because eventually what I want to cultivate a relationship with you. And then both of us are talking to the same people. We just do different stuff. And so your client list is good prospects for me, and my client list is good prospects for you. And then we have a mutually beneficial relationship. So if you can figure that out and figure out who those people are that share common clients, and just go network with those people and build those relationships, you can have like this crazy exponential effect where, I only need 15 or 20 people that have a couple hundred clients that are good prospects for me, to really make this thing work. So I think people are too short-sighted. They kind of try and sell to everybody that they meet instead of developing that relationship and getting to that next layer. And then the other thing is, they just talk too much, and they're not curious about the other person. And you got to go into these things and be really interested about how can I provide value to this person? What are ways that I can, make a difference and make introductions for you, and put some deposits in that relational bank account. That's something that I think people hear, and they know on a logical, like, mental level, but they don't really internalize it or do it. Making those deposits in the bank account are so important. Like, I mean, I need to make 10, 15, 20 deposits before I'm ever going to ask for something from someone. And that might take, years, and that's okay. But people are, you just got to be playing that long game instead of I'm going to show up at this event and get something out of it. So
I love that, playing the long game. And who do they know? I think John Maxwell says, who do you know that I should know? I think I said how he words it.
yeah,
Who do you know that
yeah,
I should know? It's not that person necessarily. And I know, I go to a lot of events, obviously. People are always like, well, what did you get out of it? I'm like, get out of it? Like, what did you sell? I'm like, nothing. Like, that's not
yeah,
why I'm there. I'm there to build relationships and learn.
yep,
So,
yeah,
stuff like this, like, this is great. I'm like, I'm taking notes. So, this is great
yeah.
stuff.
But it's hard, it's hard to have that long-term focus. And especially if you're new in business, you've got this sense of urgency, and I need to get stuff done now.
Yeah, I'm
And that's
starving,
true.
literally. Like, I need to pay the bill
Yeah.
now.
Well, and that's, I've been doing this for 20 years. So now it's a lot easier. Like, I don't have to, put a whole lot of effort in to get referrals. But in the beginning, it wasn't like that. Like, I was still cold calling in the beginning, because you got to feed yourself, right? And you can't, hammer people for referrals when you haven't built a relationship with them. So, uh, there's an analogy that I like to use when I'm talking about this stuff. So, you put all this effort in the beginning, and you don't get any results out of it. And eventually, there's this line where, the results start to go up and the effort starts to go down. And I think, when we went to the moon, whenever that was, 69 or something like that, the amount of fuel, and I'll get the numbers wrong, but like round numbers. So it was like 1 million gallons of fuel, and it was like 250,000 miles, round trip.
Right.
But we burned half the fuel to go the first 4 miles. So if you are burning all this fuel and you're putting in all this effort, and you're like,
Mm,
shit, I'm not getting any results out of this. And the effort expenditure is not commensurate with what you're getting back. Most people quit and they just are like, it's too much. I'm not getting anything out of this. They don't give it enough time. And so then they quit and they got to start back at square one. So like, with that shuttle, if we had said, oh, we're burning half our fuel and we only get 3 miles and we fall back down to the earth, you got to start back from square one, refuel, 1 million gallons. But once you get past that point, then you're like, okay, now I can go another 250,000 miles on half the amount of fuel. So, it's tough, but you got to have that long-term vision. You got to know that it's going to, and have faith that it's going to turn out and it's going to pay off in the long run.
So have you always, so sales and anything has a lot of self-belief, and you do a lot of running. I know that you're competitive there. I'd say you're pretty high self-belief in yourself. Have you always had that, and when you faltered, how do you build that back? Because that's something I've noticed a lot of people maybe don't have as much. So how could they build it?
Yeah. So I'll go back to the beginning when I started selling Cutco. I I didn't have a whole lot of self-belief and I wasn't a super confident kid. And um their program, it was a lot of sales, self-motivation stuff. And one of the best things that I got out of that was um, a guy named Marty Dimitrovich. He was our regional manager, and he gave a talk, and he said, "You just got to do four things. Yes, tell yourself these four things. Write them on a note card. You say them 100 times a day each, and it'll take care of itself." So he said, "I am the best. Fun equals more money. Anything worth having is worth working for, and do it now." So those were the four things. I wrote them on a 3x5 note card, and I taped it to the dashboard of my car. And
Hey
I
guys,
said those
let's
things.
stop for a second. Guys, stop this. Grab a pen and paper. Let's go through these again because these are good. So, and I know someone's like, "Wow, that was good," but I didn't get time to write
Yeah,
it down. So let's go through those.
sure,
What was
sure.
the first one?
Okay, I am the best.
Okay,
Fun equals more money.
fun equals more money. Yeah.
Anything worth having is worth working for,
Anything worth having is worth working for. I like that one.
and do it now.
Do it now. Good. Okay, so you tape that on your dash.
Yeah, and I repeated those things out loud in my car on the way to school every single day, 100 times each.
Wow.
And then I kind of like, got more, I added more things later. And eventually my car was just like all 3x5 note cards, taped and pinned everywhere. And my friends thought I was insane. And they were like, "This is a bunch of crap." And, everybody thought it was a scam. And, I was turning into some different person. And, you're an idiot, Phil, and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't care. I was like, whatever, guys. Like, I am like
Why
100%
didn't
bought
you
into
care?
this.
Why? Because so many people do care. Why didn't you care?
I saw, um, I saw other people. My manager at that time, my direct manager, was a guy named Adam Hartung. He was a couple years older than I was, and he had this office, and he had a nice car, and he had a house, and all the things that I was like, that the evidence of success is there, and I can see that he's not lying about this. Like if he was driving some crappy car and, living in his mom's basement, it would have been harder to, say, okay, I get it. I believe this. But, and then I went to that conference, and that guy, Marty Dimitrovich, our regional manager that, I mentioned, he was like next level, and he owned a ski resort that I had actually skied at. And I was like, oh, this is the real deal. And so I don't know, whatever it was, I totally believed that if I did these things, I would be successful. Like there was a direct correlation. and I bought into it and I believed. And I think
That's a huge one right there. So many
yeah,
people don't believe, they just like they look at someone and so if you're listening to this and you're like one of these people, you can change it anytime. So if you're working with someone or you're like being around someone that has what you want, do what they tell you to do. Just do it. Like,
yeah,
don't question it, just do it. So many people are like, well, I don't know how that works. I don't like, oh man, I love this because like so many people do that. They're like, I remember when someone told me to do affirmations and read my goals out loud twice a day. And I'm like, this is so dumb. And then at one point, I just decided it's really dumb, but I'm going to do it because the person that was telling me to do it was way more successful than me. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll try it. Like, so what if I look
yeah,
like an idiot? If it works, great. It freaking works.
yep, yeah,
So,
yeah, and it worked. And so when I got that job selling Cutco, I was driving a Dodge Neon,
I had one of those
and
ones.
it's terrible. Such a crappy car. Um, and so I had all these things in my car, and I'm like saying this stuff to myself, and then you start to build this belief, and you change the way that you think about yourself, and you're like, I can do this. And then you got to follow it up with the actions, right? You got to go do the things that you know you need to do. So like I had these goals that I wanted to hit, and you break it down, and like that was another, I guess, I don't know if key component or whatever, but like I'm a nerd and I like numbers, and I like I mean, I was on the accounting team in high school. Like I'm super nerdy. So I, I like broke down, here's where I want to get. And I know these are my numbers, the closing percentages. This is how many calls and appointments and sales and da 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 da. So I had this plan, and then you just got to work the plan. And so I did it, and then, I wasn't perfect, and I was still young and stupid and had other things going on besides selling Cutco. So I like screwed off and, dropped the ball on stuff. But I did enough of it where I started to see success. And then 3 weeks before I graduated from high school, I bought a Lexus SC 400, which is like this sexy sports car. And it was actually the exact same car that my manager, Adam, had. And he had let me borrow his car to go to prom in. And I was like, okay, I need to get one of these. So it was like extra, worked extra hard to get that. And like all my friends stopped talking, a little bit more when I got the car. And then all my teachers at school, which some of them I had sold Cutco to, they were like, dude, are you like selling drugs or something? Like, what
What
are you
are you
doing?
doing?
It's,
We worry about you.
um, yeah. So anyway, but back to your question, like it was those affirmations, and I did them religiously without fail. That was the one thing I didn't skimp on. And I didn't care if I felt stupid. And I just followed the plan,
Wow.
and yeah, it worked out.
That's so good, man. I know we could go forever, but I try to keep these short and sweet because I have a short attention
Sure.
span, so I figure everyone else does. I always ask
Yeah,
three final questions before we wrap up, and then anything we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful. Like I said, there's a bunch in here. I'm sure we'll have Philip back on. Make sure to reach out to him if you have any questions. We'll have all of his information in the show notes. But first and final question is, if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you would say that could help them find it?
ooh,
Mhm.
uh I'll give you one word: journaling.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah,
Just journal. All right. Number two,
yep.
what's a favorite quote and why?
um Zig Ziglar. You can have anything in life that you ever wanted if you first help enough other people get what they want.
Hmm.
And it's very aligned with my business. But it's also something that I just truly believe at my core. And I really am here to be a servant to other people. And, even if it's a lot of times it's at my own expense, and I don't, make forward progress like I want to. but I'm really here to help other people, and anything I can do to do that, it just makes me happy.
That's good. I love that. And third and final question is, what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
There's a word that I really like. It's a tattoo that I have, but I'm Finnish, and it's a Finnish word, sisu. And sisu is basically the ability to go above and beyond in situations where stamina, determination, and persistence are needed. And that's something that I've sort of latched onto early on in life. And yeah, it just really resonates with me. And I would put that on there.
So I love it. All right, you run into someone in a coffee shop. They're like, man, that was good. Like they've wrote down the affirmations. They're using them. They're doing the things, hopefully. What's something though that we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for our listeners to know about or wrap up with?
It takes time, and it's not sexy. Like everybody wants to learn the spinny flippy kicks, and how do you do the cool stuff? Like where's the hack? Where's the shortcut to, get all these referrals? And it's like there's not a hack. I'm sorry. You just have to spend the time nurturing these relationships. And the other thing that I would mention is, and if you have me on again, we can dive more into this, but there's something called Dunbar's number. So we have a cognitive limit on how many relationships we can maintain, and it's 150. And we, yeah, so we don't need to cast a wide net and go, have this massive network of, a million LinkedIn connections and stuff like that. You can't handle it. So figure out who your core people are and just go deep with them, an inch wide and a mile deep. So that's what I would.
Good. I like that. Wow.
Yeah.
Good gold. Hope you guys stick to the end because that was good. 150 connections, good solid connections, not 10,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Guys, let's go out there, share this. Let's go out there and help one person or one starfish at a time. If we can help one person or one starfish at a time together, we can change the world. Thanks for being on, Philip.
Appreciate you having me.